You know, when we look for lessons in leadership, we usually turn to CEOs or four-star generals. But what if one of the most powerful blueprints for leadership actually comes from an ancient scribe named Ezra? We're about to dive into his story, and you'll see why his approach to things like humility and integrity, well, it might be more relevant today than ever before.
So let's just start with the biggest question of all. What really makes a leader great? Is it their vision, their charisma, pure raw power? The story we're exploring today offers a pretty surprising, and I think, powerful, three-part answer.
Okay, so to really get why Ezra was such a big deal, you have to picture the world he walked into. See, the Jewish people had come back from exile, and they rebuilt their temple. But then, for about 80 years, nothing. The historical record just goes completely silent. It's out of this kind of historical fog that Ezra suddenly appears, under a brand new Persian king named Artaxerxes.
So, who was this man of the hour? Let's get to know him. Let's meet Ezra, a scribe who, as it turns out, was the perfect person for a pretty incredible mission. It all starts with his name. Ezra literally means Yahweh helps. Now, that's not just a piece of trivia, it's the core belief that's going to drive his entire life. I mean, just imagine carrying a name that's a constant reminder that any success you might have isn't entirely your own doing. Now, take a look at his resume. This guy is not just anybody. He's a skilled scribe, a priest from a very prestigious family line, and he carries this heavy history. One of his ancestors was executed by the Babylonians, so he's got the credentials for sure. But here's the thing. The text keeps pointing away from his skills, away from his family tree, and it credits all of his success to one simple thing, the good hand of his God being upon him. That's a huge statement of humility right from the get-go. And you know, this deep sense of purpose wasn't just some vague feeling he had. It was actually built on a very practical three-part code. And this simple formula, study, do, teach, is the absolute key to understanding his whole leadership philosophy. And this right here, this one verse, is the bedrock. It says Ezra set his heart on this path. This wasn't just a hobby or a casual interest. This was a deep, intentional, all-in commitment. And the order of these three actions, well, that's absolutely crucial. And the order, you see, the order is everything. It's a blueprint for being an authentic leader. It has to start with deep knowledge. You have to study. But, you know, knowledge without action is pretty empty. So the next critical step is to do it. You have to live it out yourself. And only then, only after you've learned it and you've lived it, can you actually teach it with any real integrity. You mix up that order and you're heading straight for hypocrisy. The scholar Derek Kidner just nails it with this quote. He says, this sequence protects a leader. Study keeps your ideas from becoming unreal or abstract. Actually doing it gives your actions certainty. And that powerful combination prevents your teaching from ever being insincere or shallow. It's just a brilliant formula against being a hypocrite. Okay, so this is where the story takes a really fascinating political turn. Ezra's mission is about to get a massive boost from a totally unlikely source. I'm talking about the most powerful man in the entire empire. So Ezra gets this letter from King Artaxerxes, who calls himself the King of Kings. Now, hold on, this isn't him claiming to be a god. It's a language thing. In ancient Hebrew and Aramaic, they didn't really have superlatives like we do, greatest. To say something was the best or the most, they just repeated the word. So Song of Songs means the very best song, and King of Kings just means the most exalted, the most powerful king around. And what this most exalted king does next is, well, it's just astonishing. He issues this decree that gives Ezra an open travel pass for anyone who wants to go. He donates his own gold and silver. He opens a royal line of credit for anything else they might need. He makes all the temple workers tax exempt. And to top it all off, he gives Ezra the authority to set up an entire judicial system. This is basically a blank check from a pagan king to go rebuild a foreign religion. It's unheard of. So, how does Ezra react to this incredible royal support? Does he send a thank you note to the king? Nope. His very first words are to give all the credit to God for putting this idea into the heart of the king. In Ezra's mind, the king was just the instrument. God was the real one behind this whole plan. So this leads us to a huge turning point, a journey that's about to become a serious test of radical trust. Ezra now has this huge caravan of people and a fortune in treasure that he has to move across a dangerous, bandit-filled landscape. His leadership is about to be put to the ultimate test. And he's standing at a crossroads. He's got two very different options for security. On the one hand, he could totally ask the king for a military escort. Easy. The king would have given it to him in a heartbeat. On the other hand, he could actually live what he just told the king, that the good hand of our God is on all who seek him. I mean, asking for soldiers now would make that big statement of faith seem kind of hollow, right?
So what does he do? Instead of calling for swords and shields, he calls for a fast. He chooses to live out his trust in the most radical way. He and all the people with him humbled themselves, and they prayed for protection directly from God. He was quite literally betting their lives on the principle he had just proclaimed.
But here's the thing. Having faith didn't mean being careless. Not at all. And this is where we see Ezra's leadership shine with total integrity, especially when it came to that massive fortune he was responsible for. And just so we're all clear, we are talking about an immense amount of money. The silver alone weighed nearly 25 tons. Just try to picture that for a second. That is an unbelievable weight of both physical treasure and moral responsibility. So how did he protect it? Not with soldiers, but with this absolutely brilliant system of accountability. Just look at this process. The treasure is weighed by Ezra himself back in Babylonia. Then it's entrusted to a group of 12 leading priests for the entire journey. Then, when they arrive, it's weighed in again by a totally different set of priests in Jerusalem. No one person ever had unchecked control. It was transparent at every single step. This is what integrity looks like in practice. Okay, so let's bring all this home. What can Ezra's example really teach us today? When you boil it all down, it really comes to two critical lessons for any kind of leader.
The two virtues that just scream out from his story are humility and integrity. We see his humility when he prays and fasts instead of calling for an army, and when he delegates that huge responsibility instead of hoarding control. And we see his integrity in that meticulous, transparent accounting system. He understood a really crucial truth. Both the people and the resources under his care were sacred.
So that brings us right back to our world. Ezra's leadership was this powerful fusion of deep humility and unwavering integrity. And it leaves us with one last question to think about. When you look at the leaders around us today, which of those two qualities, humility or integrity, seems to be in shorter supply?